Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to my November wrap-up. I'm so happy to say it, but November has been an amazing reading month. Not only the amount of books that I read was really good, also the act itself of reading was so enjoyable for me. This year wasn't the best reading year and I had some more rough months, but November definitely was one of the best reading months of this year. And it was just so fun. Not all of the books that I read were amazing. I also had a few 2 stars, but the majority of books that I read I really enjoyed, and I found a few new favorites, which is really amazing. Also in November there was the Pokemon-a-thon, the Pokemon themed readathon, and it was amazing. I didn't expect so many people to participate. It was just so much fun. I had the most amazing time and I also read so much. I completed all the prompts and all the challenges. It was such a success. It was just so fun, and I will be definitely doing more rounds in the future. The really interesting thing about November is that it was drastically different from other reading months this year. I was in a really big romance reading mood and I read a lot of romances, and I usually read a lot of romances, but most of the romances that I read this year were in an audiobook, which is nice and amazing, but I almost didn't read any romances in text this year, and reading in text is just a different feeling. So this month I did read a lot of audiobooks like every month, but I also read a lot of romance books in text. It was just so amazing, and I also really explored a lot of romance tropes that I usually don't read about, and just books that I didn't even thought that I'm going to read. Let's say that this month was really surprising. And the other thing is that I also almost didn't read things for my physical TBR. I actually did read a good amount of audiobooks that I own the physical book of, but almost all the rest of the reading were in ebooks, and I do read ebooks sometimes. But this month I read so many ebooks, I just really forgot about my physical TBR. But honestly, I feel like I was seeing my physical TBR every day, and I got already less excited about those books, although I have so much on my physical TBR, and I feel that my break from my physical TBR just makes me now want to go back to my physical TBR, so I feel like it was a good break. And yes, I'm just really excited to talk about all the books that I read this month, but let's start firstly with the stats. So I read 12 books in November, which is amazing. It's not special because I do feel like usually I read 12 books a month, but it's still amazing, especially considering that in October I was in a reading slump. 4 months, like I said, it's very interesting. I read 6 audiobooks, 4 ebooks, and 2 physical graphic novels. Actually, a few of the audiobooks are books that I read also in ebook, but the majority of the reading was in audiobook, so I consider them audiobooks. But yes, I feel like it's fitting. Usually audiobooks are half of my reading each month. I just love audiobooks, and audiobooks are the reason that I'm able to read so many books each month. Age group is also interesting because I read 6 YA books this month, which is okay. I do love YA. I read 4 adult and I read 2 new adult. Usually I don't love categorized books as new adult, but I just feel like I had 2 books this month that's the only fitting age group was new adult. Now series and standalones, I read 8 standalones and 4 series, which is okay. I do try to wrap up series now, but I feel like it's so hard, and I do lean more to standalones now because it's the end of the year and I don't want to start new series. Although I did start a few new series this month, but that's okay. Let's forget about it. Genres, like you can see, I read 5 romance books, 3 fantasy books, 2 mystery thrillers, and 1 horror and 1 dystopia. Now, actually, the romance is only 5, but the majority of the other genres that I read had romance in the story. Just romance wasn't the main genre of the story, so I did read mostly romance this month. Also the fantasy, most of them were romances. It was a lot of romances. And star rating, this is the very exciting part. The star ratings this month are amazing. I had 1 4.5 stars, which is really amazing. Like, it's really close to 5 stars. I had also 3 4 stars, and 4 stars for me are books that I love, so that's amazing that I already read 4 books that I really loved this month. I had also 5 3.5 stars. I just couldn't give them 3 stars. It's so hard not to give half-star ratings, but I feel like the 3.5 stars is a rating that I do use a lot. I had 1 3-star, and unfortunately I had 2 2-stars, but that's okay. The majority of the books I really enjoyed. But yes, now it's time to talk about the books that I read. The first book that I read was Squad by Maggie Tokandahel and Lisa Sterl. This is a new release graphic novel. I love graphic novels so much, and this was such a good graphic novel. I really enjoyed my time reading it. Basically here we're following a new teenager that goes to a new school, and then she clicks with the popular girls at school. But like you can maybe see on the cover, the popular girls are werewolves, so they are basically the squad squad of werewolf girls, which is so cool. And honestly, this book felt to me like Mean Girls, just more horror with werewolves. Like honestly, it actually felt like Mean Girls. It was pretty gore, like it categorized as horror on Goodreads. It's definitely gore, but I really loved it. In the end, I gave it 3.5 stars, and the reason that it wasn't 4 star for me is because I felt like it was too short, and we did touch a lot of subjects, only on a surface level, and I felt like there was so many topics that I really wanted to have more depth in them. I feel like it was a really good base for the story, but it could have been so much more, and I really wanted to see more development in the graphic novel, but still, it was really good, just really quick, but a lot of graphic novels are like this. But yes, overall, it was a very enjoyable graphic novel. It's definitely a graphic novel that I would recommend, and it was a good start for November. The next book is a book that I read in an audiobook, and this is The Stowaway by James S. Morey and Darren Wermuth. Now, basically, this is a thriller mystery. I would categorize it more as horror. Although all the Goodreads reviews that I saw said that this is a thriller mystery, I heard an interview of the authors, and they said it's a horror, so I'm not sure what the genre is, but basically we're following a woman that was a juror in one of the biggest cases of serial killer in the US, and there was a lot of news around this case, and one of the jurors basically voted that this man is not guilty, and because one juror, this man was set free, and since then all the news and all the people are really harassing all the jurors to find out which juror voted the not guilty. Now, the main part of the story that comes a little bit later is that the main character of the story goes to a cruise ship, and in the cruise ship things start to happen, and maybe it's related to the serial killer, maybe not. I don't want to say too much, but basically it's a horror on a cruise ship, and I did read a thriller on a cruise ship in the past because I really love books in water setting and books on ships, but I feel like this book was so good, and this book just took the concept of horror on a cruise ship and made it so well. Like, I think that the authors did an amazing job. It was so fun to listen to. I think I finished the whole book in a day or two because I couldn't stop listening to it. It's definitely one of the most enjoyable horror or thrillers that I read this year. It was just so much fun. It was really fast paced, and I always wanted to keep reading and to know what is going to happen, but at the same time I felt like the characters had a lot of depth in them, and there was a lot of reasoning behind the things that happened, and it was very gore, like so much gore. That's why I think it's more fitting as a horror, but all the goreness was so fitting for this kind of story, and I feel like they did everything so well. The only thing that I didn't like is the jumping between the timelines. I feel like it could have been done better, but this is the only complaint that I have about this book. The rest was so good and so fun. I would definitely recommend, and I gave it 4 stars. Now, the next book is a book that I read in an ebook, and this is The Zodiac Academy, The Awakening by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. Now, this is basically a romance fantasy story. This is the 4th book in a series, and I saw a lot of people talk about this series, especially on Book Talk, and from what I understand, there is a lot of steaminess in the series, and I just really wanted a romance, and this isn't a series that I thought that I would read, so it was really surprising to me that I just decided to go for it. And basically we are following 2 twins that found out that their dead parents aren't their real parents, and that they have another parents in another fantasy world, and now the 2 twins are going to this fantasy world for the Zodiac Academy, basically learn magic and how to use their skills. And the thing is that I was so surprised from this book. Like, I really enjoyed it, which I didn't expect. The thing is that this book really felt like a fanfic from Wattpad. I didn't even know that this trope exists, but apparently there is the bully trope in this book, and apparently it's also a pretty popular trope in romance books. Again, I wasn't even aware that this trope even exists. It's really not a thing that I usually read, and this book was a lot around the romance, but it actually wasn't steamy because it's really slow burn, which I didn't expect. That's on me because I didn't really know things about this book, but it was a little bit disappointment, and I will probably won't read the rest of the series because there is 7 books. I don't have a problem with slow burn. It's just really hard when it takes a lot of books to get to the end of the romance, but it was really slow burn, and I just felt like the whole story again was like a fanfic. It was like a school of a lot of magical creatures with a lot of really hot guys. And also I think about the bully trope, I don't think that I really like it, especially because of the reason, because I feel like this trope gets really repetitive really easily. If the whole plot is that the boys are bullying the main characters, it just keeps happening again and again, and yes, it just keeps getting worse, but still it really feels repetitive. So this is actually my main problem with this trope, except that this is also a hard trope to read. Like, it's not fun seeing the main character gets bullied all the time, and also the bullying in this story was really hardcore. Like really, I would kill you bully kind of bully. So it was so weird, and yes, it's just not the books that I usually read. The whole experience was still really enjoyable and still really pleasant. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was just really fun, trashy read. Maybe I will read the second book, I'm not sure, but I'm glad that I read it and I was pleasantly surprised from it. So definitely it was an enjoyable read. And the next book is another graphic novel, and this is The Dire Days of Willowy Manor by Shannon K. Garrity and Christopher Baldwin. And basically here we are following a woman that rescues someone from drowning, I think, I already can't remember, and then this someone takes her to this big mansion, and the main character always read a lot of graphic stories, so for her this mansion is the most amazing thing, especially like the books that she always read about. And this is fantasy horror with a lot of romance in it. Now the thing is that initially I gave it 3 stars, but honestly I can't remember this book. It was such a forgetful graphic novel, I just honestly can't remember anything that I read about here, and I also didn't really enjoy it. It was based, I think, on Jewish mythology and on something else. I just feel like everything was really messy, and it was really hard for me to follow the storyline. I was anticipating this graphic novel so much because it seems amazing. More spooky graphic novel, really perfect for the fall and for the winter, but it was so disappointment from it. So this was definitely one of the most disappointment reads this month. So yes, it's pretty sad and I didn't really enjoy it. The next book that I read was The Love Hypothesis by Ellie Hazelwood. Honestly, I just tried to read as many books with blue on the cover because it got me bonus points in the Pokemon phone. And this book cover is blue. And this book is very popular. It's one of the most hyped up romance books of this year. And we're following a PhD student that gets into a fake dating situation with one of the professors. And it's a very geeky love story. And I really love the fake dating trope. I feel like a lot of the book community really love this trope. And honestly, I really get the hype. Like, it was a really good book. I feel like it's a book that I'm very comfortable to recommend to a lot of people because I feel like so many people can love this book and this writing and just those characters and plot. It was so good. Like, I feel like it was just structured so well. I gave it 4 stars. Honestly, it's a little bit of a low 4 stars. I don't feel an amazing connection to this book. It was really amazing and really fun to read, but it is a lower 4 star, but still it's a 4 star. It's not a 3.5, it's a 4. It was really fun. Just a really enjoyable read. Again, I'm so comfortable in recommending this book to everyone. Also people that don't read romances, I feel like it was just so fun. And just those kind of books that everyone will enjoy. So yes, it's definitely worth up the hype. Now the next book is the most surprising book in this whole November wrap-up, and this is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Basically here we're following a 19 years old teenager. She has a boyfriend and she don't have a lot of money. She works all the time, and then in her birthday, when she's waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up from work, she's going to see some kind of movie, and then she meets a guy, and it's obvious that the age difference between them is really big, but still they are really clicking. And then she's finding out that this guy is the father of her boyfriend. So this is the dad's boyfriend trope, which I never thought that I'm going to like. It's another example for the things that I don't thought that I would ever read. It's a trope that I never explore, and honestly I don't love this trope. Also now I feel like I really had problem with the age difference. They had a big age difference of something like 20 years. It was really big, so it was really weird for me to read this book, but I feel like I did a little bit enjoy from this trope because it wasn't the dad of her boyfriend. They had the element of forbidden love, and for me forbidden love is one of my most favorite tropes. So I feel like because of it I enjoyed parts of the dad's boyfriend trope, but the age gap was a little bit hard for me, but I still prefer it much more than the bully trope, so that's good. But basically this book, this is the 4.5 stars that I read this month. It was so amazing. Like, I didn't expect that I would love this book, and especially I didn't expect that I would love this book this much. Like, I feel that this is the best romance book that I read this year. I'm just so surprised from it. And the thing is that after I read this book, I looked at Penelope Douglas' other books, and a lot of people say that Birthday Girl are their most favorite book of Penelope Douglas. So I'm really afraid that I read the best book of Penelope Douglas, but I will definitely be checking more books by her. She writes a lot of tropes that I usually don't read. Like, I feel that most of her books, from what I saw, are or bully romances or age gap romances, which is again 2 tropes that I usually don't read. I don't think that I would really enjoy from these tropes, but the writing and the characters and the plot, she made the whole story so understandable. And although it was really hard for me age gap, I really understood why it was and why it worked for them. And it was just so amazing, like such a good romance story. It was just so amazing. Definitely I would recommend again and again. I would recommend it so much. It was so amazing. And yes, honestly, I can talk about this book forever. It was so amazing, so fun. I loved it so much. 4.5 stars, almost 5 stars. It means a lot because usually I don't give 4.5 stars easily. And yes, it was just so enjoyable. The next book is a new release that I read in an audiobook, and this is The Project by Courtney Summers. Courtney Summers is the author of Sadie. And I was so interested to read the story because the idea sounds so interesting. Basically, we are following a woman that got into an accident with all of her family when she was small, and all of her family died except her and her sister, and the main character of the story got into a coma, and when she was in a coma, her sister went into a cult, and now it's a few years later. The main character of the story already woke up from the coma and she works and everything, but her sister is still in this cult, and it just sounded like such an interesting story. Like all the concept of cult just sounds amazing, and I don't read books about cults, and I really wanted to explore this book, and I feel like this book had so much potential, but this is definitely one of the most disappointing reads that I read this year. I gave it 2 stars. I was so disappointed from this story. Basically, it's supposed to be a thriller mystery. It wasn't, not a thriller, not a mystery. Definitely none of those genres, because it was so not thrilling and so without any mystery, like you knew everything. So first of all, the genre of the book isn't right. The second thing is that we followed the 2 sisters. The main plot was with the sister that lives her normal life, and we did so a few parts of the big sister that was in the cult and saw her story in the beginning, and I found her POVs so much more interesting, and I feel like the whole story could be so much better if we saw the most of it through the eyes of the character that was in the cult from the beginning. But the main thing is that I just felt like this book dragged so much. I understand why you need to make this kind of book more character driven and more slow, because it talks a lot about cult and a lot about believing in just really hard topics, but I just feel like it was too much, just too much dragged. It came to the point that so many things just repeated each other, so many things in the plot just happened again and again. The start was really interesting and really intriguing, but I feel like after the 25% it just got more boring, and as the story progressed I just got more and more bored. So I was so disappointed from this book. Unfortunately, like I anticipated it so much, because again the story and the idea is amazing, but unfortunately it wasn't for me. For me it was a big disappointment, and it was 2 stars. The next book that I read was another audiobook, and this was Discover in One Break by Isabel Sterling. This is the second book in the These Witches Don't Born duology. I love the first book so much. I read it last month and it was such an enjoyable fantasy contemporary. I was so surprised from how much the fantasy was a main element of the story and how much the plot was so good. And also the characters were just really amazing. I felt like it was an all-rounder book. Just everything here was so good. So I was really excited to pick the second book, and honestly I think it was a really good book. I think it deserves 4 stars, but when I read it I felt like 3 stars, and the reason is because I was really not in the mood, and because I'm such an extreme mood reader. If I'm not in the mood, also if I'm reading an amazing book, I just won't enjoy it because I'm not in the mood to read it. So unfortunately I gave it 3.5 stars because it felt to me like a 3 stars, but I think it deserves 4 stars. The plot was really good, the characters were amazing. I feel like it was an amazing ending to the duology. It's definitely kept the same vibes that I felt from the first book. I just feel like it was so good, and again the plot is good, the characters are good. This is a very good duology. Like this is definitely the duology that I will keep recommending. A really great YA duology to read. But yes, unfortunately I really wasn't in the mood when I read it, and this is the reason that I didn't enjoy the book, although it was so good. I just picked so many sequels in the past few months, so I really felt bad to put this book and to pick it in another time, because I just felt like it would take me so much time to pick the second book, and I really was aiming to finish this duology before the end of the year. So this is why I forced myself to keep reading it, although I wasn't in the mood. Do I regret it? Yes, a little bit. I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's just really hard to be a mood reader. I just feel so conflicted about this book, but it's definitely a very good duology. The second book isn't less good than the first one, and it's definitely a duology that I really recommend. Then I read another audiobook, and this is Darkhouse by Karina Helly. This is basically a romance horror paranormal story that I was interested to check for so long. Like honestly, I wanted to read this book for so long because I love romance. I really got into horror this year, and I really wanted to see this combination. And basically we were following a woman that went into a vacation where her uncle lives, and he lives on an island with a really big lighthouse, and this lighthouse is very, very old. And then she's going to this lighthouse, and in this lighthouse there is a ghost catcher, like someone who films the whole thing for his show. And basically what happens is that they are starting a new show together. Now, I wasn't sure how the series is going to work. There is something like 10 books in the series, and I'm not sure where I heard this, but I was pretty sure that every book is another couple, but this isn't the case with this series. This is the same couple. It's a really slow burn. It means that nothing really happened in the first book, romance-wise, but there was a lot of tension. And actually, when I got to the end of the book, and when I realized that this is the thing about the book, that this is a regular series with the same couple that keeps going for the rest of the books, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Like, I was really happy that I'm going to keep reading more books with this couple. And usually slow burn that takes a lot of books in a series is pretty hard for me, but I still really, really enjoyed it. And I'm very, very interested to check the second book. I gave it 3.5 stars. Unfortunately, it wasn't as enjoyable as a first read, but it was still a very, very enjoyable read. I'm not sure if I will continue reading the series because it's so hard for me to pick sequels for series, but this is definitely a series that I really want to keep reading, so I really hope that it will work out and that I will actually keep reading the series and to see where the characters are going to go and what is going to happen to them. So yes, it was very enjoyable, and I really hope to read the second book soon. So the next book is another audiobook that I read, and this is The Program by Susan Young. Basically, this is a YA dystopia story, and we're following a teenager that lives in a world where suicide got into a disease, and so many teenagers committed suicide. So the whole world is now working differently, and there is this thing, it's called The Program. And when the parents or the teachers sees that someone might be affected by this illness, they're sending him to the program, and in the program, the teenagers loses all of their memories to basically heal from this disease. And it's just really dystopian story. It gave me strong nostalgic vibes of the dystopia era that was something like 10 years ago. For me, dystopia is one of my most favorite genres, and I almost don't read any dystopia. I feel like there isn't a lot of dystopia. Why dystopia? It's not a thing that a lot of people right now. Also, The Program is a pretty old story. Was it good? It was actually very enjoyable. It was surprised for me. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was definitely not a 3-star average read. It was more than enjoyable, but I don't think that I would keep reading the series just because it's a very young YA. If I read the same series when I was in high school, I would definitely adore it, but now I don't enjoy it as much because I am looking more into adult reads and not as YA reads, but it was still very enjoyable. I feel like it was a really good book. Definitely a series that in the past I would enjoy so much more. It was really fun to get back into the nostalgic dystopia phase and just made me want to read more dystopia, and I really enjoyed it because of the setting and because of the world of the dystopia. So it was really fun, and I just really love dystopia, so I definitely need to read more dystopia in the future. Now the next book is another book that I read in an ebook, another romance book, and this was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapta. This is basically a very, very slow burn. Mariana Zapta is a very well-known romance author that I never checked books by her. This is the first book that I read by her, and she is well known for her slow burn romances. It was definitely very, very slow. It's also a pretty long book. I think it had something like 500 pages, but I read the whole book in something like 2 days because it was so enjoyable. Basically, we're following a woman that works as a personal assistant for a very famous football player. He's one of the most famous in this field, and she's working for him for 2 years, but she really wanted to move forward. She always wanted to be independent and not to work for anyone. She has a business of design. Now finally she got to the situation that she has enough money to quit her job, but then this man that for 2 years was so cold and so mean to her starts to be really sad and really want her to come back to work for him. I don't want to say too much because it is a slow burn and it takes time to get to this part of the story, but this book has the fake dating trope. I just was so surprised from this book. I was so okay with the slow burn. Honestly, this book could be 800 pages long. It was just so enjoyable. I couldn't stop reading it. It was just so fun. Definitely a book that I would recommend. Really fun adult romance. I loved it so much. The characters were amazing. There was so much depth in the story, in the characters, and a lot of character development. Definitely it was a 4-star. I really enjoyed it. One of the best reads that I read this month. Definitely I will be checking more by Mariana Zapta. I'm really excited to read more books by her. Definitely an amazing way to end up the month because it was one of the last reads. And now for the actual last read of the month. This was The Wolf and the Woodman by Ava Reid. I read it for the Enchanted Enchanted book club, which is our monthly book club. This was our November pick. I will link the live show in the video description if you want to see my full thoughts about the book. But basically, this is an adult fantasy story. It was also horror, like it was very, very gore. And basically, we are following a 25 years old woman that lives in a village, and every year the Woodmans are coming to this village to take one of the girls. All the girls are called the wolf girls because they wear a skin of a wolf on their head. Like, actually, I enjoyed the fantasy element in it, but unfortunately, it was the second to star reads this month. I was really disappointed from this read. I really loved the idea. The fantasy element had a lot of potential, and I actually felt like the gore was really, really fitting for this kind of story. Just the whole plot, the structure, just everything was so messy, so slow, very repetitive. I also didn't like any of the characters, and the characters felt to me like 16 years old teenagers and not 25 years old grown people. So I was so disappointed from this read. Unfortunately, I didn't like it. I'm not sure if I will check more things by this author in the future. This is her debut. Like, again, I do think it had a lot of potential. The writing was nice. Just in the end, the whole plot and the execution of what happened was really, really disappointing. So unfortunately, it was a disappointing read. And again, I will leave the link to the live show if you want to see the full thoughts about the book. And yes, this was my November wrap-up. Again, November was one of the best reading months this year. It was just so enjoyable. Like you saw, I had a few disappointing reads this month, but also the reads that weren't 4 stars, were 3.5 stars, and still really enjoyable reads. Just overall, it was a very, very positive reading month. I really hope that December is going to be the same. That's what I'm really, really hoping for. Yes, it was so fun, and I really wanted already to share all the books that I read this month with you. It was just so fun to talk about everything, and I really, really hope that you enjoyed this video. Until my next video, you can check more videos by me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone!